Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Disgustingly Resilient podcast and another episode of Flash Outbreak, our sort of starter's guide to getting into the Death Guard faction and also potentially the hobby in general and building up your army from your first ever combat patrol box all the way up to your first 2,000 point army. And obviously the topic of today is getting to that final amount of our 2,000 points, building those lists and kind of how it goes. Now I'll caveat this straight away. Today I'm not going to give you a 2,000 list here, go and play it. I see too many places try and do this because the reality is 2,000 point armies are pretty cool to give to someone, but they mean nothing without context. They are, I can give you, you know, the most complicated list, the most powerful list possible, but if you don't know what you're doing, why it works or how it works, or understand how to make lists fundamentally, it's not going to do you any good. So I will do an example video if people want that, so let me know in the comments if you want me to see a video where I go over like 2,000 point example lists. There is one in here today, but really I'm going to teach you today how to successfully go about building your own first 2,000 points. A quick reminder, if you do enjoy the content, please feel free to leave a like and a subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. We always vow to make every single bit of our content always free. We literally live off donations and support. So if you want to support the channel, you can press the join button, become a Plague Marine. You get access to our Discord, you get access to our giveaways, all that kind of good stuff there for as much as £2.99 a month, so less than a coffee. But even just a like and a subscribe helps massively. So let's get into today's video. So again, as we always say, first things first, rule of cool. When you, especially if you're new to the hobby in general, and this is your first army and your first time getting into it, the most important thing is you have fun. Enjoy what you enjoy. If I sit here and tell you Mortarion is overpriced and he's not worth it, but you got into the hobby because you saw Mortarion and you got the big Google eyes and was like, ooh, I want that, then go buy Mortarion. And Mortarion's not bad, just to caveat very quickly, Mortarion's quite good. But again, it's just an example. So, no matter what I sit here and tell you, especially if you're new into the hobby, do what you think is cool, do what you enjoy. I may be top competitive Death Guard man 9,000, whatever you want to be, but the reality is, just have fun with the game. Like, I play competitive, but I'm not going to use stuff I don't like. I'm not going to force myself to do it. Play what you enjoy, have fun with it, and you will have more success than any amount of pros telling you what type of list to take. So, things to consider. So, first up, hobby goals. What do you want out of your list and your army? So, sometimes this can be, well, I've just painted this model, this unit, and I really want to make sure I use it on the tabletop. So, obviously, that's going to influence your list. You know, you're going to want to, you know, take that unit with you. Maybe your hobby goal is to become a competitive player. So you want to, you know, go to tournaments and do the best you can. So now, again, that's going to influence how you go about building your list. You're going to want to research what are the best units, what are the strongest synergies. You're going to think of the game differently and fundamentally to someone who their hobby goal might be to have a nice, friendly game down at a local shop, but have a chance at winning. In which case, they can take a bit more of the fun units, you know, tone it down. It's not as cutthroat. It's not as, you know, refined, perfect to like the point specifically. So just understand your hobby goals and what you want to get out of it. Because again, if you're a brand new player, maybe you just want a functioning list that you can start learning the game with. In which case, that's going to be very different to what a top-end, cutting-edge tournament list looks like. So just understand that, because I can't answer that one for you. What do you want out of the hobby? Next one. We need to think about your playstyle and what units you also enjoy. There's a weird thing in Warhammer where, and it matters more to some people than others, but like for me example, I have what's called a pet unit. And that pet unit for a long time was considered absolutely trash. And that was the Fetid Bloat Drone with the Heavy Blight Launcher. For the past 2 editions, that unit has been terrible. Currently, that unit is broken stupid good. So I have always played with the Heavy Blight Launcher drone. I always used to have one in my old list because I just think it looks awesome. The pictures on the screen there, look how cool those things look. That isn't mine. That's one of our amazing members. It's just for clarify that, but the model itself is very cool. So sometimes you want to always, you know, play with your pet unit. Maybe, again, Mortarion example, like Death Guard Dave on this channel loves Death Shroud. He'll never make a list without Death Shroud. So that's something he has to consider. Another thing is your playstyle. We don't all play the same, and we'll get to this in a later slide, but your playstyle can heavily influence the type of list you bring, what you enjoy, and what you have good results with. And that's all about creating a list that works for you. I'm not you, you're not me, we're all different people. What a list that works for someone like Dave, I can play it and do okay with it, but it can feel very unnatural to me at times, and vice versa. And then we're also going to be talking about duplicate units, build around units, because these are all important things to think about now as we get to those higher points levels, and your overall game plan when you approach the game. So up first, we're going to cover this though. So I said to you in the last video, there are 3 roles in the game. 3 core roles: hammer units, trading units, and scoring units. And you haven't watched the last one, go check the last video. But to summarize these, hammer units are your hard hitters, the damage dealers, the big beefy boys. Then your trading units are your skirmishing units. They can die, it doesn't really matter too much, but they want to get some value before they go down. And then you've got your scoring units. These are your absolute goobers that just walk around, score points, stand on objectives, and try and get that overall VP to go upwards. However, there are 4th roles. And the interesting way to think about this is, almost every army in the game has a different 4th role. And for us, that is the contagion spreader. For people like Tau, it's the spotters. And there's all different things like Tyranids, there's the synapse units. The 4th role is faction specific, and ours is the contagion spreader. And this is important because it is our most important role. Our rule for contagion is the most important rule in our army. It does so much for us. It makes them less tough, which means it's easier to wound them. You can reduce their save now, it's easier to kill them, so our damage spikes through the roof. We have stratagems that rely on them to be in contagion range and be afflicted. So now we can use, those amazing stratagems. Death Shroud Terminators can drop in 6 inches away from units that are afflicted. So it's so important because we need to bring units that are dedicated to this role of spreading contagion, getting our opponents in contagion and keeping them there, because that contagion makes our army function. It's our army rule. Every single detachment uses it. We're all built around it. And it's very, very important to make sure it's in your list. Now, the interesting thing is, you don't have to have dedicated contagion spreader. You want some. You definitely need some. But they can also fulfill secondary roles. So Chaos Spawn, for example, they're the fastest unit we've got. They've got a scout move. They can go through buildings. They also carry contagion. Makes them an amazing trade-in, because they can go forward and kill stuff like scouts and whatnot. They're also great for scoring. They have OC, they can do actions. And because of their speed and the fact that they're kind of throwawayable if you want, it's very easy to have them be a part of your contagion package as well. So in one turn, you can have a unit of spawn, go, 8 through a wall, advance a bit extra, get near someone, drop some contagion on them, and then you drop a lot of damage on that unit. Or they can just walk 8, do an action, and then spread contagion while they're doing it. So you don't have to, the roles can be shared between units. It's not just this is only contagion spreader, but just understand that the roles of those units in your army are going to be very, very important as you go forward in this game. So just bear that in mind. So yeah, contagion spreaders, they join the 3 critical roles. So now we have hammer units, trading units, scoring units, and contagion spreaders. And one thing to consider here is how your army needs its contagion applying. If you have a load of Death Shroud Terminators, you need your opponent to be in contagion range so you can deep strike 6 inches away from them, which means you need to have your enemy in contagion in the movement phase. So fast moving or forward deploying units, Poxwalkers, Chaos Spawn, Bloat Drones that can push up the board are going to be vital to bring in that list. But if you've got a different route and instead you're focusing on like loads of tanks and guns, really, your important area of contagion is for the shooting phase. So you actually might not need things like Chaos Spawn to run forward. I'd still recommend it, but you can actually bring stuff like 5 Plague Marines because they can shoot a target, and then after they've shot, whatever they've shot is now in contagion. So you can use little 5-man squads of Plague Marines to pop out, shoot the target you want to kill. Now it's in contagion, and the rest of your army can then shoot at it with all the improved abilities. This now makes those little 5-man Plague Marine squads contagion spreaders in this list. They've gone from, being a trade unit to more of a contagion spreader. So just think about how you approach it. Always have in the back of your mind, how does this list do for spreading contagion, and how does it go about it, and does it work for me? Obviously, if you're playing Mortarian's Hammer, they can just pick 2 units a turn to put them in contagion automatically, so you don't need as many contagion spreaders in that detachment. But everywhere else, just make sure you're focusing on your contagion, okay? Now, we've got some 2,000 point guidelines. Now, really simple ones. Let's not forget the basics that we covered last time. Hammer, scoring, trading, and contagion units now. We want to make sure we have all of them. I said in the first video 2-2-2 ratio was important. As you go up, try and at least have 3 of everything. but you can then start to vary it up. So if you have, try and have 3 dedicated squad units, so 3 squads of Poxwalkers, for example. Trading units have like 2 block drones and a chaos spawn, cool. Contagion units, again, that could be included in those Poxwalkers and those spawns, so that's fine. And then hammer there, bring some Death Shroud, bring some Plague Marines, bring some Predators. The damage portion scales more dramatically required at the top level, but as you'll see again, it all depends how you approach the game. So we'll get there. Victory points win games. It is very valid for a player to focus when they make their list on playing the mission, scoring points, and denying their opponent points. You don't have to bring tons of hammer units to kill your opponent. It's a very valid way to go about it, but you can also win the game by controlling the game. So there are different ways to play the army, even inside just this one faction. So do remember that. And also, trading matters. You can't just spam, you can't just spam 6 10-man bricks of Plague Marines with all the bells and whistles, because they're 400 points each. So one, you can only get 5 of those. But now you have 5 incredibly deadly squads, don't get me wrong. But the problem is, you're going to have to do actions, and you're going to have to stand in places to score victory points. And when you lose one of those units, you've literally lost 20% of your army. So, bring some small things along with the big things. Don't just get distracted and just go, oh, powerful unit in the list. Because I see that happen a lot as new players. Now, things we need to consider on top of the basics. What is your local and overall game meta? So, the meta, for those that don't know, refers to what is good in the game. What is the state of the game currently? So right now, the global meta, as you watch this video, at the time of recording, is Death Guard is very good, and Knights, Imperial and Chaos Knights, are also very good. So the meta is dictated by your ability to deal with those 2 armies. That's in the overall game meta. However, what's more important to you potentially is your local meta, your friend group meta, your local store. If everyone at the local store is playing, 500 crew Tau, then you preparing for the night meta, which the overall game is in, doesn't matter because you're not going to be playing against that. You need to obviously prepare for your local meta instead. Now, we don't want to completely tailor our list and, counter someone completely, but it's just something to bear in mind when you're building your list, because you don't want to rock up to that table where in that store where everyone's playing 500 crew and you've brought all the anti-tank and you're like, cool, I just don't have a chance to win this game. So do bear that in mind. It can impact you, it impacts your list, and it will impact the units that are taken and what are successful. We also now need to consider building redundancy in contingency plans. Having one scary Death Shroud unit is fantastic. It goes in, it kills something, but we're in a bigger game now. You can't just rip the heart out of your opponent in one move. Like, that can happen at the smaller levels of the game, especially at 1,000 points. Like, one big engagement can kind of decide it. It's not really the case at 2,000 points. So then, on the clapback, which is like the return hit, you might lose that Death Shroud unit. Well, I've only brought one, so I guess I'm just out of luck now. And this is where we need to start thinking about redundancy. So we're going to bring 2 of those Death Shroud units now. We're going to have 2 scary Death Shroud units. So if the first one dies, we've still got a backup one to go and deal with their second scary thing. And we also need to start thinking of, well, what if things don't go well? What if my little Rhino gets popped turn 1? Do I have another Rhino that can come and pick these guys up? Do I have a way to keep them safe, out of the way of things? So building redundancy and planning for, like, unfavorable matchups, for example, is quite important for 2,000 points. We also need to look at your list strengths. What is making your list strong? There are different kinds of lists in the game that work well. Certain lists have really high unit counts, so you can just, out-trade your opponent all day. If I have 20 units and you have 10 units, and every time we trade 1 for 1 on units, well, you're going to run out before I'm even at half. So I win the game. So it's very important to understand what makes your list strong. Is that going to be unit count? Maybe it's your stats. Why are Knights so good at the moment? Well, because every model in a Knight army is toughness 11, 28, 26 wounds, 3 up save, 5 up invulnerable. That's really hard for a lot of armies to deal with because they just don't have enough anti-tank firepower. So that's called a skew list, where basically you are skewing your list to purposely not take anything that isn't high toughness or high save, or it even could be the opposite. Maybe all you've brought is, again, 500 crew, so las cannons are useless against you. That's called a skew list, and that's something you have to understand could be a strength or a weakness of your list. Because at the same time as knights being really good, if you do run into an opponent that's brought 500 las cannons, you're going to die real quick. So it's a weakness and a strength. And obviously, we need to now consider out playing to your detachment, maximising the detachment you're taking, the strengths. Deathlord's Chosen, all the stratagems require Terminator keyword, so you're not probably going to rock up with it using only tanks, because that's not going to end well for you. You kind of need to make sure you are playing to your detachment strengths and getting the most power out of those detachments and the units you bring along. So, we need also, though, to understand yourself as a player. We aren't the same, as I've said before. As you play, and as you play more, you're going to learn what kind of player you are. Some people are aggressive players, some people are pressure players. These are the players that like to just go straight into the enemy's lines, put the pressure on straight away, start killing straight away, start putting the opponent's models in the tray straight away. It's very, very aggro, straight off the rip, go, go, go. We have people like this in our own community. We have Zito, who's part of our Discord community. He's renowned for playing extremely aggressive in how he plays. It's almost like a running joke of be aggressive. And these players like to basically cause as much chaos early, get the opponent behind early, and basically win from there. So he might not have much left at the end of the game, but it doesn't matter if your opponent's got nothing left at the end of the game. Then, on the other side, you have defensive, punishment-focused players. I'm one of these. I play quite reserved, quite defensive. I make my opponent make bad decisions and bad trades. And over the course of the game, slowly, I will get an advantage. And then I'll have this big turn where I punish them for throwing away too many units early. And now I can just barrel over them because I've got more. My defensive play has kept me in the game and kept me more units compared to them. And now I'm going to leverage that advantage against them later on in the game. There's also scoreboard and mission players, people who just bring 150 zombies and just focus completely on ignoring my opponent. I'm just going to stop them scoring points. I'm going to tie them up in combat. I'm going to not let them get to objectives while I score 100 every game. It's a very valid way of playing. It genuinely works. And then you've also got table them first, score later players. These are people that ignore the rules for like scoring units, trading units. They just bring absolute max damage, try their hardest to kill their opponent. It's very feast or famine, this last one, by the way. And they will kill their opponent by turn 3, and then the last 2 turns they'll focus on getting the victory points up there. And these are all valid ways to play, and this is all within the same faction. We are not the same. This is why I don't just give you a list, because it's my list, it works for me, and if I give my list to an aggressive player, and then they run it at my opponent, they're going to lose, and they're going to be like, this list sucks, man. It doesn't suck, it's just not for you. So hopefully you understand what I'm saying with that. But once you understand yourself, let it guide you. Like I said, if it's aggression, you want fast pressure, you want huge turn 2 threats. So start bringing things like flesh mower drones, Death Shroud Terminators that are going to drop in and go straight into charging after those mower drones have done a first wave. Land Raider to get up there, carry you guys. It can move through a wall, something like that in Mortarian's Hammer. Drop guys out, go for a charge. All these kind of things that are going to help decide what you need to bring in your list. And then you got me. I'm defensive. So I'm going to bring things like Plague Burst Crawlers because I can shoot over walls, indirect fire. So I never have to expose myself and I'm still killing my opponent. Then I'm going to bring some Fight First Marines so I can't be charged, because if they charge me, I will fight first and I will kill them. So again, bad trading for them. And I've brought lots of cheap units to trade. So I'm going to put out, 60 points of Poxwalkers onto an objective. It takes my opponent 200 points to clear them. Then I kill 200 points. There's value. Rinse and repeat for 2 turns to get advantage, and then suddenly they've got 1,400 points to my 1,800, and now I'm going to kick their head in. So you can see how these will affect the units you bring and sort of help mold your list to what you need it to be. So, as we said before, meta does matter. The game is always changing. There's nerfs, there's buffs, new units come out, new books come out, the missions change, the decks change. Everything changes constantly, and it's important we adapt to the meta. And as I said before, there's your local meta and the global meta, and sometimes they're not always the same. So always play to where you're playing, focus on that one first. Now, meta being said, there are evergreen units. These are units that will always be decent despite the meta. So These are units that fulfill a unique or required role. For example, big damage dealers. It doesn't matter what the meta is, you're always going to have to kill things. So stuff like Death Shroud Terminators, Plague Marine Bricks, doesn't really matter the state of the meta. You're always going to need damage dealers, and they're our highest damage dealers. So you're going to always, if you buy a box of Plague Marines or you buy a box of Death Shroud, 9 times out of 10, that unit's always going to be viable. It's evergreen, it can go in any list, and it always performs pretty damn well. But then on the other side, we've got niche meta units. We call them tech units sometimes. These are units that are great in some metas, but not others. They're great to have access to as you build a collection, but they don't have to go and rush out to get them. They answer very specific problems for your list in a local meta. So again, we'll get an example in a second. So here's an example of a meta. Current meta, shooting armies are crushing absolutely everyone. So what's in value at the moment? Well, stealth is pretty good, being -1 to hit. That's pretty good. So maybe, Flyblown Host is pretty good because that gives you all your infantry stealth constantly. We like you that. Speed's going to be important. Not so much for Death Guard, we're not exactly the fastest, but being able to close the distance on our opponent as fast as possible means they're going to be able to shoot us left. So that value of that speed is up there. Sticky objectives become really good because your opponent now can't just shoot you off an objective because it's sticky. They have to come and stand on it physically. So as long as you can stop them doing that, you're going to score primary. And obviously stuff like Lone Ops. Where's my little Lord of Poxes? Here he is, little Lord of Poxes. Him, that little guy right there with a big sword on his back. Him giving 18-inch Lone Up, pretty good if the meta's full of shooting and everyone's trying to kill you from 30 inches away. But what's not so good in a meta of shooting armies? This isn't the current meta, by the way, it's just an example. Slow-moving, brawling melee units. So, again, like, Death Shroud are pretty good, but do you want loads of Death Shroud in a game where they could potentially, have to slug up the board and get shot to pieces? They're pretty resilient, but they're not unkillable, so they're not actually going to get much value there. A melee Hellbrute, for example, is never going to make it to combat, so that unit's not going to be good for you. So the value of those units is depreciated. But then, suddenly, boom, like everything changes. GW have seen the light. They said, man, everyone's sick of dying to Tau. Screw Tau. We're going to change the maps. So the maps change. Lots of terrain gets added. Now, there's terrain everywhere. And to accompany this, Blood Angels Codex just came out, and it's really good, really strong. So what happened to the meta? Well, the values have changed. The value of stuff like Overwatch, like all those flamers we can bring, is gone up because there's a lot more charging going on, a lot more close range fighting. Fights first. Well, if those Blood Angels are going to get on top of you real quick, great counter to that is bringing stuff that's got fight first. And also, durability, being able to take that hit, because we can't outmaneuver the Blood Angels, they're just faster than us. But being able to take that initial hit and then punch back nice and hard, that's gone up in value. But what's gone down in value? Well, stealth, because if they're running us down in melee, they're not shooting as much. So that means we don't need stealth, and because the terrain's changed, Tower now have gone from top tier to bottom tier, we don't really need to worry about that as much anymore. And Lone Op, again, Lone Op's great in the shooting meta, but now we're in a meta where, Emperor's Children, Blood Angels, all this stuff is running us down, so we don't need those units anymore. So if we were to consider this in terms of list, think about tech options. So tech units, these weird units, Foul Blight Spawn, it has an anti-melee rule. You can get once per game fight first. It also has a 9-inch aura if you can't advance into that aura. In the first meta, this guy is not really good. Tau aren't looking to charge you. Tau aren't going to be trying to get that close to you. They want to stay away. They want to shoot you to death. So the Foul Blight Spawn had no place in that meta, really. So you probably weren't going to put him in your list. But now, the meta's changed, and now he's a really good option to add because he counters the current strong army of Blood Angels. So you can see how this guy is a tech unit because he changes and adapts to the meta. Bad in one meta, good in another. But stuff like, Plague Burst Crawlers, tanks, Pathetic Blight Horse, they're always going to be good because they just deal damage. I'm an anti-tank unit, little Blight Hauler, there's always going to be tanks in the game, pew pew, I win. But the Foul Blight Spawn's very specific in his role, and you can see him now putting in work. Morty's the same. Again, maybe you want to consider Morty in this. In the shooting armies, Morty could be quite hard to use because he's quite big, he's easy to shoot, so it's quite often he'll go out, get a charge, and then get shot to death by the entire army. Whereas now, if everyone's having to come close and there's less shooting, Morty's really strong. He's got a reactive move, so if someone comes to charge you, you can reactive move 5 away from him to make that charge harder. You can also fight on death with him. He's also fairly durable in a melee fight because It's not likely you're going to get charged by their entire army. It's normally 1 or 2 units, and you can bring detachments with like -1 damage, for example, to help that as well. So you can see in this example, a simple meta shift can really change what's good and what's not. So we always cover this on live streams. We talk about meta and what's good at the moment. So if you ever want to know what the current meta is, tune into a live stream once in a while. Shameless plug. And as I said before, redundancy is good. 2,000 points, duplicate units become very common. Lists are built around units, detachments, and combo, especially competitive lists. If you're going to build a list around a very strong combo, like right now, Lord of Contagion plus Death Shroud is incredibly strong, then you're going to probably bring more than one of that unit, because if that is the strength of your list, so for example, you know, Champions of Contagion, that squad can get crit 5s. Excellent. That's really, really strong. So what's better than one squad of that? Well, 2 squads of that. And what's better than 2 squads of that? Well, in some instances, 3 squads of that. Sometimes maybe not. But it's always an option. Having multiple units for these combos are preferable. And it also means that an army won't suddenly lose all of its power because you lost that single unit. I have lost one of my deadly squads of Lord of Contagion Death Shroud. I built my detachment around it. I put my enhancements on it. The rest of my list is here to facilitate getting that thing to deep strike where it wants to go in. And I ballsed it up and I lost it. Game's over. Cool. But if I have redundancy and I've brought multiple of them, the game ain't over just yet, son. I've still got a backup. I've got another unit that can come in, do the same role. We're still in the game. So you can see there how redundancy is good. In 2,000 points games, it's also hard to just table someone. Again, 1,000 points can often be decided by a single engagement just because you don't have many units. But at 2,000 points, this is unlikely to be done. So this means sometimes you're going to need multiple instances of the same unit to perform the same trick over and over again. Clearing your opponent off their objective is great, but at 2,000 points, it's relatively normal for them to retake that objective. So you're going to have to retake it off them, which is going to require the same sort of unit that just did it, maybe even something a little scarier. So having redundancy and having units that can repeat rolls one after the other is very important at 2,000 points. But as we said, don't duplicate everything. Some combos require epic characters. For example, Eldar Fire Dragons with Fuegan. So Fuegan, or whatever he's called, is extremely powerful in that unit. He makes them all get extra range. That unit kills any vehicle it looks at. It's also extremely expensive. You can only take one Fuegan, so you can't take duplicates of it. And if played correctly, it will kill any vehicle anyway. So does it actually need duplicates? Not really. It's there to do a specific job, do it, keep doing it, and not die on the way and do it very well. So you don't want to bring multiples of that. Maybe they're using a stratagem that lets them move after shooting. So if you have that access, that's great. You can hop out from behind a wall, shoot, and get back behind the wall. But if you bring 2 of the units, only one of them can do it a turn. So you're not just going to have the other one sit there in the wind and die, but you also can't just keep them behind the wall because they're never going to get value. So in that instance, you don't want a duplicate because you'll never be able to use the combo on that duplicate. So just consider all these things. Sometimes a one-done missile is all you need. Like, if you've brought a unit whose entire role is to just drop in, kill my opponent off primary for a single turn, and we'll try and win from there. A single unit of 3 Death Shroud, no characters included, that can do it. Don't have to rinse and repeat it. But you're probably going to rinse and repeat Death Shroud, but they might have characters in them, because they're going to go after the hard-to-kill units. So just always consider, if a unit's in your list, what is it doing? Do I need another unit to be able to do that in case? Or is this a one-and-done kind of job? Like the Demon Prince with Lone Up. You don't need 2 Demon Princes with Lone Up to stand on an objective to guarantee you hold it, because you're probably never going to be in an instance where you can do that, and you're going to be wasting a lot of points on useless rules like the free CP. Only one of them can use it a turn. So just bear this stuff in mind. And then we've got Buildaround units. These are large, expensive units generally, and they affect your entire game strategy, and they can heavily influence the detachment you bring and how you build your list. So I do have an example of this, and we're going to look at it now. And this is actually an example of everything we've talked about. So I just want you to look at this example here, because we're sort of wrapping up now. This is an example list that I took to a recent tournament, and it encases everything I've just talked about. So I knew when I went to this tournament, I wanted to bring a brick of 10 Blightlord Terminators, because I think they're really cool, and I wanted it to work, and I also know I wanted to play aggressive, which is not my normal playstyle choice. So I set myself rules here. I set myself hobby goals. So my hobby goals are in fact impacting this. My unit that I wanted to take impacted this, and a playstyle decision impacted this. And it wasn't even my playstyle. I wanted to put myself out of my comfort zone to try and improve as a player. So these three things are already decided before I even looked at a list. So how did this affect it? What was my detachment choice? What was the role of these Blight Lords going to be inside my list? Do I want to give them character support? Do I want to give them enhancements? In which case, we've got to look at detachments again. What are they not wanting to be doing, and what are they actually good at? And by looking at all this, we actually came to this. So this was a Deathlord's Chosen list I took to a tournament. I went 4 wins, 1 draw, and came 2nd place overall at the event. And it answered all of them questions for me. So, the list as is follows. 2 Lords of Contagion, 1 rocking the Warp Rock Talisman. We're in Deathlord's Chosen, by the way. Typhus, Lord of Virulence with Vile Vigor, 10 Blight Lord Terminators, 3 squads of 3 Death Shroud Terminators, 2 squads of Poxwalkers, 2 squads of Chaos Spawn, 2 Mythic Blight Hordes, and 3 Heavy Blight Launch Drones. So, going back to our previous questions real quick. Detachment choice. Well, I knew I wanted to make these guys work, and I wanted to be aggressive. So I wanted to pick a detachment that would make me want to be aggressive, but also allow me to enable the Blight Lord Terminators to work. So I took Deathlord's Chosen, because Deathlord's Chosen rewards you for being in the middle of your opponent's army, because you roll dice and deal mortal wounds to everything nearby. So you want to be deep into your opponent's lines. Excellent. It also is incredibly focused around Terminators, which again, Blight Lord Terminators are, surprisingly. So excellent. So it's working on 2 fronts for me there. Happy. Not only that, I wanted to make sure I got the most out of these Blight Lords, so I gave them a Lord of Virulence who could give them access to real ones to hit and full rerolls to wound. Then I looked at the enhancements, and now these guys I wanted to use as an anchor. An anchor unit is a role where basically they are there to be the big brick on the table that takes a hit, and then I basically clap back into whatever tried to kill them. But I wanted them to be aggressive. So there's an enhancement in this attachment called Vile Vigor, which lets the unit get +1 movement and reroll all advances. So they can go pretty fast. Okay, that's great. That means I can be nice and aggressive. The sad thing is that if I advance, I can't do anything. But once again, the detachment has a stratagem that gives me 1 command point, give the squad assaults. That means they can advance and shoot. Happy days. So I know if I bring this in character on this squad, I can give them +1 inch move. They can keep advancing, they can reroll that advance if I get a 1 or something, and I can keep shooting while I'm doing that, and it keeps me moving forward and applying pressure, which is how I wanted to play. I wanted to be aggressive, I want to make this unit work as best as possible, so I'm going to keep them putting out firepower whilst moving as fast as possible, and putting those mortal wounds into my opponent's lines, which speeding them up is going to help. Excellent, so we've already answered a couple of reasons to get the Blight Lords to work. But now, we need to think about the list around the Buildaround unit. So have we followed the core rules? Well, I've got 2 scoring units, I've got Poxwalkers, well I've got 4 technically, I've got 2 Poxwalkers, 2 Chaos Spawn. They can both do scoring, that's fine. Someone's got to stand on objectives, someone's got to do actions, so I've got 4 units there to do that. I also have some little demon engines. I don't mind a demon engine having to do an action for a turn, so that's fine. So scoring, we're looking good. Trading units, well, here's the thing. Trading isn't going to be as important because I want to be very aggressive. I want to get straight on top of my opponent and into their lines. So the value on trading is not needed as much because my idea is to get this army on a big turn 2 push into my opponent's lines with everything. I want all the Death Shroud to come down. I want the Blight Lords to be in there shooting away. So I actually don't need as much trading, but I still haven't completely got rid of it. I've still got 2 units of spawn in there, but these spawn are actually my contagion spreaders, more importantly than the trading units, because I need to make sure my Death Shroud can make those charges on turn 2. So I've brought 2 dedicated, technically 3 because Poxwalkers can infiltrate, contagion spreaders, so I can 100% get the drops where I need them on my big turn 2 go turn and my big aggressive push into my opponent. And then hammer units, Blight Lord Terminate's obviously a hammer unit, and the 3 squads of 3 Death Shrouds are all hammer units themselves. And I've even got another hammer unit with the 3 heavy Blight Launch drones and Lord of Virulence combo here. So we've got plenty of damage in the list here. But I've made sure that even with all my damage, all my Terminators, I've still got scoring, trading, contagion spreaders, and then my hammers. So it's all included in this list there. And then we've also got what are the Blight Lords, like we said, what do they want to do and what do they not want to do? So again, they want to be the big anvil, they want to move up the middle, they're going to start on the board, I'm not going to put in deep strike, they're going to move up, they're going to be aggressive, get into my opponent's face. So turn 1, we're going to move up but try and be cagey, and then turn 2, we're going to have this big go turn. I don't want these guys doing actions, I don't want any of the other Death Shroud Terminators doing actions or anything like that. None of that nonsense. So we need to make sure we've got lots of other cheap units, because if you're going to bring expensive units, you want to bring cheap other units. So as you can see, all the points are in the Blight Lords, the Death Shroud, and then our cheap units are our Poxwalker Spawn, and even the Demon Engines, because we're only cap out 100 points each. So there's a nice balance of shooting, of ranged firepower with the Blight Launch drones, the Blight Haulers, a bit of anti-tank in there from the Haulers and the drones, synergy between the army. It plays as I set out for it to do, to be aggressive, to get on top of my opponent, get into their lines, put me out of my comfort zone and playstyle, and I've also managed to bring a pet unit along there. Now, did I think about the local meta for this one? I did, hence why the Blight Haulers and the Blight Launch drones are here, and the Lords of Contagion. I'm going to have to kill Knights, so I need to bring a lot more hammer units than I normally would, hence why there's so much damage in this list. If Knights weren't in the game, you could potentially have changed out a Lord of Contagion and a Blight Launcher drone for another, you know, a couple more skirmishing sort of units, a couple more aggressive Flesh Mower drones. But Flesh Mower drones don't do anything to Knights, so instead I had to bring that extra character and that extra heavy Blight Launch drone and the anti-tank firepower that those can bring. So yeah, as a recap, I hope this has kind of helped give you an example of things to think about and to consider when building a 2,000 point list, because again, it's not the most simple thing in the world. So I've tried to give you things to think about more so than just take this thing here because good. So hopefully this will help you focus on how you like and want to play, the play styles you're developing, what you're enjoying. Do you like tanks? Do you like infantry? Do you like being aggressive? Do you like being defensive? Hopefully it's taught you the 4 core unit roles. We covered the first 3 last video. Now we've added in that extra one there, the Contagion Spreader. We've talked about the importance of redundancy. Again, the list we just looked at. I've got 3 squads of Death Shroud Terminators. So if one of them goes down with a lot of Contagion, I've still got another one to back it up, and another one with Typhus as well. The Blight Lord's too expensive to be made redundant because it would take too many points. So I've just gone with the one of those, but I've made sure the other units around it have redundancy. Bear that in mind. Same for the Contagion Spreaders. I might lose a Chaos Spawn unit. Sometimes your opponent's brought indirect and kills them. But instead, we've built that redundancy in, and I've brought 2 squads just to make sure. So, importance of redundancy. Importance of learning the meta and your local meta and letting that influence some of the decisions you make, but not too much. We don't want to list tailor and just make sure we beat everyone. We want to make sure it influences our list, but it doesn't dictate our list. But most importantly, keep enjoying your hobby the way you're having fun, the way you're enjoying it, because that is the most important rule of all. And last but not least, go out there, get a win for Kirby. Look at him here, average Knight player on the left, the Chad Death Guard player on the right. Look at him taking him down in a scuffle. Look how concerned that Knights player's face is. Is the Death Guard player concerned? No, he's looking up to the warp. He knows Papa Nurgle's looking down on him. So yeah, thank you so much for sticking with us. Sorry it's a long one, these ones, but I hopefully have taught you something about how I go about thinking about list construction, how my head and my processes work when I'm making a list. Hopefully it's taught you something and changed how you approach list building. Thank you to our amazing Death Shroud members who are on the screen right now. These are our highest tier membership. These guys are absolute legends. Keep the channel going. So much love for these guys here. But also, thank you very much to you, the viewer, the listener, the watcher. Hopefully you have gotten something good out of this video and I've not just been rambling too much. I hope you guys enjoy it. Stay tuned for it. The next up's going to be a how to use Mortarion video. And if you do want a video where I have an example of 2,000 point lists for different playstyles and builds, let me know in the comments and maybe even give me some suggestions. You know, give me a challenge. What kind of list do you want to see me build? And I will try my best to get one up for you. That could be a cool video. But for now, thank you so much for listening. Take care. Stay rotten and I will catch you all on the next episode. Bye-bye for now.